Hey, everybody. Welcome to another week of podcasts. I'm here with Jocelyn. We are bringing one of our favorite topics to you today, something both of us have been interested in for quite a while now. And I think, especially for Jocelyn, this is becoming kind of a topic of focus and expertise. So we're really glad to be able to roll our last topic out as self-compassion. I think it's been kind of revealing itself already in our other discussions. It's been interesting how much we've talked about normalizing these other things that we're talking about and how all of these things are part of the human struggle and that we can't just expect ourselves to swip a flitch, flip a switch and just, master these things. And so Jocelyn in particular has been naming self-love and self-compassion as we go through these weeks. And so we thought we'd spend a little more time just on this topic in and of itself. There's a lot of research, a lot of focus in therapy settings and just the caring professions in general and how we can all work on this. So Jocelyn, I'm so glad that you and I are talking about this today. And as we open up, I'd love to ask you if you could maybe start by telling us a little bit more about how your interest in this as a topic kind of developed.
Um, well, just in my personal life, being a grad student, and having to navigate burnout and imposter syndrome and being tired, and beating myself up for being tired and feeling like I had to be this perfect star pupil and that I wasn't allowed to give myself any graces, any slack. Um, and that was not sustainable. That was not realistic. And it turns out I wasn't the only one. A lot of my peers feel the same way. And once I started getting into clinical work, I was like, oh, well, even my clients as well all kind of have this overarching theme of not giving ourselves grace, not showing ourselves self-compassion or self-love.
Yeah, I love what you said just now about beating ourselves up and expecting ourselves to be perfect. I think a lot of us probably relate to that. I know I resonate with that. What fascinates me about this is that, as common, almost universal as it is to beat ourselves up and expect perfection from ourselves, we don't necessarily expect that from other people in our lives. When you think about the people that we care about, like our good friends, we would we would give our friends grace. We would give our friends some space that they're on the struggle and they're doing a good job, and we would recognize what they're putting in. And it's so interesting to me that it's very difficult for us to talk to ourselves the way we would talk to a friend, which is how I kind of find my way into the topic of self-compassion in a very like boiled down way. I know that's how I think about it. Um, but I'd love to invite you to tell us more about it, kind of from a broader perspective, and kind of if we start to define it and break it down a little bit more into some of its tenets. Where would you start with explaining and breaking down self-compassion?
Yeah, I think what you brought up right now is one of the main themes that comes with self-compassion. So there's three themes. And one of them is common humanity versus isolation. And what that means is sometimes we get frustrated that things aren't exactly how they should be. We're not exactly where we should be. And it's almost as if we're the only ones going through that. Nobody else can relate to this. Everybody else has their stuff together, or or maybe they have it worse than me, so I'm not allowed to feel this feeling. Or I don't deserve to celebrate this because somebody's out there doing better than me, doing more than me. Um, and but we grant that compassion to our friends. You know, if they got that job promotion, you would celebrate them. If they failed that final, you would be able to console them and tell them it's okay, you did your best, we'll try again. But when it comes to us, we think that we're the only ones who have to suffer through that alone, and that nobody else can relate or be going through the same thing.
You say that, it's making me think about how much that very point has shown up week by week in this class, that we think we're the only person with irrational thoughts, or we think we're the only person who struggles with mindfulness and being in the moment, or the only person who feels imposter syndrome. That for every one of these topics, I think we've come back to the importance of recognizing that other people experience the same thing. And so now here we come to a place where this very point kind of lives, like it really lives as a part of the definition of self-compassion. Self-compassion is to know I am not the only person experiencing this. I'm not the only person who's worthy of this grace or worthy of being celebrated. So thank you for that. That I think for me, that's part of my ongoing struggle is to make that space for me to feel certain ways and know that I'm not alone in that.
Yes, and that's what it means to be human is we're not perfect. We're going to make mistakes, we're going to struggle, things can be painful and difficult, but we all go through that. Nobody is perfect. Nobody is without mistake or without pain. And that's part of the common humanity, is that we're all going through the same thing. Maybe not the exact situation, not the exact same situation, maybe not the exact same feeling,
Right.
but none of us are perfect.
Right. Everyone's struggling somewhere.
Mhm.
And yeah, and that's a good point. They don't have to be the same feeling, or we don't have to experience a certain situation all in the same way. We don't have to have the same reaction to that situation or the same set of feelings. As we've said, all feelings are valid, but to acknowledge that we are all struggling with a lot of these things, and our struggle is as valid, our journey is as valid as the people around us, the people we care about. Um, that's a
Mhm.
great first point. Are there other kind of tenets or key points that you would pull out in understanding what self-compassion is?
Yes. So the second one is self-kindness versus self-judgment. And so which just ties into exactly what we're talking about right now, which is where, typically we tend to be quick to judge ourselves, to be critical of ourselves. Um, where instead self-compassion is about having a warm understanding towards yourself when you fail, when you make those mistakes, not criticizing yourself or beating down on yourself, fixating and um, being hyper focused on what I could have done differently. Of course, we can learn from our mistakes. Of
Right.
course, you want to learn and reflect, but over obsessing, over fixating, and beating yourself down is not compassionate. And it's not going to help you grow or learn either. And so, taking that moment to be kind to yourself and take ownership. You know what? I messed up. Maybe I didn't do that perfect. I could have done this differently. Now I know, maybe it's because I didn't get enough sleep or XYZ was going on in my life. But now that I know, we'll work towards it next time. I'm not perfect. It's okay. I made a mistake.
Yeah, as you say that, I'm thinking about all the places that that self-critic can sneak in and show up on my shoulder.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's with friendships and I was tired or not feeling my best or busy that day, and we get off the phone and I think, why didn't I say this right here? I must have sounded so selfish because I didn't give her as much space as I wanted to. I can wrap up a class and go, oh, I forgot to say this. I had this wonderful point and I totally forgot to bring that to the students. I can, you know anything in my life, I can be very quick to go, why didn't I do XYZ? And because it wasn't this perfect thing I pictured ahead of time, somehow it means I failed, which is very black and white thinking, right?
Mhm.
Do you fall into that same kind of self-criticism?
Literally this morning, which is it triggered that memory for me immediately. I have a lot due this week, a lot going on, very heavy. And so I was a little short-tempered with my partner this morning, and it was over the phone. And once I hung up, I was like, I feel so bad. Like, why am I like this? But I got only a couple hours of sleep. I have a lot of deadlines going on. And so I mended. I called him back and apologized, took ownership for what I did, and explained, you know what, I have so much going on. It's the deadlines, it's work, it's practicum. I'm so sorry. I was stressed and I took it out on you. Can we move forward? I'll make it up to you tonight. And so, taking ownership that I did make a mistake. I know I'm not perfect, but I'm not going to beat myself up over it for the rest of the day because I know in that moment I just didn't have the capacity to have the best emotional regulation in that moment.
What I love about your example is that it includes taking ownership. So this doesn't mean we excuse ourselves from any imperfect behaviors or places where we may have failed others. It means exactly that. I'm owning it, I'm working on it, I acknowledge what I need to acknowledge, and I keep moving forward. And from a place of self-compassion, I also think about owning the fact that your willingness to name it later and check back in with your partner, that's a part of giving yourself credit because not everybody
Mhm.
does that. Not everybody is willing to name errors or say I'm sorry or check in on how someone else is doing. That part doesn't always happen. So even owning the value of the way that you stepped in on that. I think we don't always own those things.
And it's a balance. It can go two ways. You can be avoidant and not take ownership at all. I could have totally ignored that I had been a jerk to him this morning and just not paid any mind to it and try to act like business as usual. Or I could have gone on the other end and been super fixated and
Right.
just
It's just
really, I
spun
can't
about it.
right. I'm going on and on about it. I'm inconsolably crying. I can't focus on my work.
Right.
There's a balance where you want to take
Right.
ownership, but you're not going to keep beating yourself up.
Yeah. That's beautiful. So we've heard common humanity, recognizing that
Mhm.
we're part of a common experience that others also often wrestle with. We've heard self-kindness as opposed to self-judgment. So we're not over here beating ourselves up about it. We're recognizing that we're on this journey and we're continuously doing our best, whatever that looks like. Are there other tenets that we should pull out of this, other key points?
Yes. One second, I need some water.
I'll have one along with you.
Excuse me. Yes, and so the third and final tenet is about mindfulness, which we just had a discussion about recently. So perfectly on topic. And it's about mindfulness instead of over identification. And so, kind of like what we're just saying right now, where you observe what's happening for you, you're aware of it, but you're not suppressing the emotion that's attached with it, but you're also not over exaggerating it and overemphasizing it. And so, kind of trying to find that balance of take ownership. I see it for what it is. I acknowledge it. I take ownership. Let's take the steps to move forward from here. How do we improve and grow from here?
Yeah, that's interesting the way that connects because I think of that both in terms of it's interesting because I see that relating to three of our weeks in here. Our mindfulness week, of course, was just that to put a space between us and a reaction that we were having and notice it without judging it. Our thoughts week was about naming thoughts, but recognizing they aren't necessarily us or reality. And our emotions week in particular was to give ourselves permission to have emotions, but also recognize that they pass, that they don't define us. Um,
Hmm.
Across all of that, it was the ability to look at it and acknowledge it and honor it, but not get so caught up in it. Um, and I think ironically, it's when we try not to look at it, we try not to acknowledge it and push it away is where we do actually get subsumed by it, consumed by it.
Yes, absolutely. And there's an important piece to that tenet, which is it's about goodwill, not good feelings.
Hmm.
And it, like this morning, it didn't feel great for me to realize that I had been mean. That wasn't an awesome feeling, but it's important that I'm taking the steps to acknowledge, okay, this is what happened. You feel guilty. What are the steps we can take to, mend the relationship, move forward, and improve, right? I'm so sorry. I need another sip of water.
And as you're talking about that, I'm thinking about it like we're grounding it in this example that's very much like there was an error that I made, and it was important for me to also own it as we move forward. And I think that's one place self-compassion shows up is, you know what, I made a real error there and I've owned it. I think sometimes it's also that there wasn't even that much of an error. Sometimes actually you did a perfectly good job, but we can be such harsh critics of ourselves that we can have some expectation that I just needed to show up and nail this thing at 150% and blow everybody away. This idea that for something to be perfectly good is perfectly good, I think is also part of self-compassion to say, actually, I did a good job. Good is good. Like sometimes after I've done some kind of a presentation or something and somebody goes, yeah, that was good. And I'm just like, good? That's all it was good? Because I want to be told that was incredible. Good isn't good enough because of some weird perfectionistic expectations I might have of myself. So I think also just knowing that good enough is good enough can also be part of self-compassion to know that if that were my friend, I would have been proud of them for doing a good job. And yet for myself, I'm not always proud of doing a good job because I had some crazy expectation up in the clouds.
Yes, I apologize. I'm
You have
getting
tickle
over
in your throat, which
the
is
cold, a
perfect.
cold. So
Yeah,
I
so
have a
so
cough that won't go away.
everybody already knows I had a cold last week. I did not give this one to Jocelyn. We have not seen each other in real life, but she has her cold this week, so she's exactly in the role I was in last week. So that lovely little thing is showing up in your throat, which I'm feeling lots of empathy for because it drove me crazy last week. Um,
Yes, so please forgive me. I apologize for sounding funky and coughing. And I'm going to show myself some self-compassion and say that it's okay. I am
exactly.
sick. I am healing. I apologize for the funky voice, but I am doing my best, and that's all I can do.
This is such a perfect example in real time. I love it.
I know. I know.
Um, So goodwill versus good feelings. I like that. I kind of want to make sure I understand it, that it's expressing goodwill toward ourselves. It's not always going to feel good because sometimes we are sitting with some, we are disappointed in how something went, or we might feel like we weren't able to do everything we were hoping to do. So that we might feel bummed about that. And to the point of the emotions week, it's okay to acknowledge that feeling even as we express goodwill toward ourselves. I can be disappointed at how something went. Maybe I got a poor grade on a test, right? I can be disappointed that I got a C when I was hoping for an A or a B and be sad about that or bummed about that and still express goodwill toward myself to say, you know what, I've really been working hard overall as a college student, and I know what to do differently on the next test. So I just learned something and I have a way to build on that. So if I think about that, that's kind of how I would see an example of what you said about goodwill versus good feeling. I might not feel good right now because I'm not going to pretend that I'm happy about the C or the F or whatever it was, but I can still have goodwill toward myself, knowing that I am working hard and I continue to build on that with the next test or the next assignment. So those can be true at the same time. That
Yes,
kind of capture
exactly.
it.
And mm, because what can happen is, let's say for the test example that you're giving, you can be avoidant and that feels good, but maybe that means you don't study better for the next test because you're avoiding um, why you failed that test. You're not taking accountability, and that just creates the cycle to
Cycle.
continue.
Right. Then
Or
it keeps
on the other end, you are so distraught and torn up about failing this exam. You study, study, study that you get burnt out. You're
Mhm.
tired. You get sick like I am right now. And that's not great either. You're feeling these extreme heaviness of emotions or no emotions. But we're trying to find that balance where, okay, I see it for what it is. It's uncomfortable. It can cause some discomfort. Um, but the goal is to invest those little seeds over time of showing yourself compassion and investing in yourself long term. And I think it's important to note that actually, when you start engaging in self compassion, especially if it's the first time you're ever doing it, there can be an increase in discomfort. There can be an increase in pain because, especially for folks who are avoidant of their feelings and they cut themselves off from that part, they don't allow themselves to feel those heavy feelings. If you open that door, that vulnerability to allow yourself to feel the heavy feelings, it can be a lot. If you've never let yourself feel those feelings, then you're feeling that anger, the guilt, the sadness, the depression. That can be a lot and it can be really heavy. Self-compassion isn't always these amazing feel-good things. Working on yourself, healing is not always a feel-good thing. It is a long journey. It can be a difficult process, and it's doing those little seeds of investment towards yourself for the longer goal.
Mhm. As you're saying all that, I'm thinking maybe this is me, but I think it might be true for some people in the class too. I think a lot of us live in the space of a lot of guilt and beating ourselves up. So the negatives might already be there for a lot of us, but we might not always know the way out of it. And so self-compassion, I find in some ways is like me almost being able to step right here and look at myself and say, Robin, you gave this the best that you could, and you have to give yourself some credit for that. And this other piece is outside of your control. You couldn't have fixed that anyway. Things like that. Like, what would essentially, to go back to what I was mentioning earlier, it's almost like, what would I say to a friend? I think
Mhm.
a friend, I would say, are you kidding? You're doing great. Look how hard you're working. Look at all the circumstances around you. No one would be able to control all of those things. Yet somehow I think I should be able to. So I think for a lot of us who live in the space of a lot of guilt and a lot of beating ourselves up, self-compassion is a step to alleviating that, but it's hard. Like it's not like oh, self-compassion. Okay, great, got it. Now I feel better. It feels weird and foreign, especially if I haven't had someone tell me that I'm good enough as I am, or that trying is what counts, or that the hard work is what counts. Like if I haven't already heard those and I'm working on telling myself that, it can feel odd to try to own that message. And I think you and I were talking about that piece a little bit earlier too.
Yes, and it ties into one of your lectures from a couple weeks ago, which is about the cognitive distortions and your core beliefs. And, sometimes what this is stemming from, right? The beating yourself up, the self-judgment, what that's stemming from is this belief of I need to be perfect or I'm not good enough or all of these negative self-views. And then we tell ourselves that and we beat ourselves up with these beliefs that we have. And so one way of engaging in self-compassion is rewriting what we're telling ourselves, rewrite that negative self-talk of, saying, oh, you're a horrible student because you didn't do that homework assignment. Changing that thought to be, you know what? I had a really hard week. I did the best I could. Now, that doesn't mean jumping over and say, I'm the best thing ever. It has to be a realistic change, not jumping to the extreme, but just showing yourself that little bit of it's okay, rewriting the negative voice that you're telling yourself.
As you say that, rewriting the negative self-talk, that's making me think that might even be one of our activities for this week, huh? Some sort of practice at what we would say to ourselves. Um, what are some other things? Like what do you do to work on this?
One way that I like to show myself self-compassion is investing in my future self. And so what that means is I know next week is going to be a really difficult week for me. I have a lot going on. I know I'm going to be stressed. So sometimes showing myself compassion is um meal prepping. I'm tired. I don't want to do it. I would rather just eat out and eat junk food, but I want to invest in the health of my future self. I deserve to feel good and be healthy. And if it takes off the stress and burden of future Jocelyn, I'm going to do that. It may not be awesome right now, but I'm investing in myself and showing myself love, even if it's not super fun. But it can be fun too. It's taking that 5-minute break to go on a walk or to do your favorite hobby, just to show yourself a little bit of kindness. Treat yourself.
One thing that's making me think about is resting. I didn't used to be so good at this, and I'm getting better at giving myself permission to rest when I'm tired. In fact, as we just said, I was sick last week, and that was a time when I really said, okay, listen to your body. If I don't have an appointment on my calendar right now, it's okay for me to go lay down for 30 minutes and come back up, because that energy that I'm taking back into my body, it is an investment in my future energy. But me of 5 or 10 years ago would have just felt really guilty for taking that nap. Like I'm wasting time right now. So to be able to reframe that nap as an investment in my well-being because it's going to help restore my energy, that makes a lot of sense, to know that we're worth investing in. And sometimes
Hmm.
that runs counter to the productivity narrative that we've been socialized into.
And I relate to the resting piece in that, I try to do the self-care when I started doing self-compassion and I tried taking my care of myself. I would do something like try to engage in rest. And then I spent 30 minutes just anxiously sitting there, telling myself, oh, you don't deserve this. Why are you doing this? Why are you taking a break? You have so much to do. And
Mhm.
so it's not easy to start doing it out of nowhere. Even when I did try to even do something as simple as resting, I did not feel rested. I did not feel relaxed. I felt worse because the whole time I was telling myself I was in doing that negative self-talk of you don't deserve this. You need to keep working. Why are you doing this? And so over time, I've also had to learn how to, when I'm trying to engage in rest, also reminding myself, this is for future Jocelyn. You are investing yourself. You deserve this. You deserve rest. You are showing love to yourself. So also trying to be mindful of when you're engaging in the self-care, when you're doing the self-compassion, think about what you're saying to yourself. Because just because you're doing the action or trying to do the action, you can still be doing the self-judgment piece of it.
Yeah. It's interesting. One of the words you said multiple times there was deserve. And that's actually one of
Mm,
my favorite words that I think it carries a lot of weight. It's very powerful to say that I deserve this good thing. I deserve rest, or I deserve to be proud of my accomplishment, or I deserve, this moment of mindfulness, or whatever that is, or even that I deserve love, right? We're talking about giving yourself love to say that I'm worthy of love. Like deserve and worthy are really meaningful, kind of radical words. And that's a part of what I like to practice with this. It's not a simple statement, but practicing that I deserve this, that I'm worthy of this.
mhm. And even simple mantras like that, like with my clients, where they've tried doing self-care, it's really awkward if you're not used to doing it, especially if you're caretaking or if you're always just taught to take care of the other person, even culturally, if self-sacrifice is a big part of your culture and you give to your family all the time, it's odd to engage in this. It can be difficult. So sometimes it helps to say mantras like, I deserve this, I deserve to be loved, I love myself. And there's a myth that engaging in self-compassion is narcissistic.
Hmm.
It is not. That is not what narcissism is. You deserve to be loved by others, including by yourself. You also deserve to love yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting one, isn't it? Narcissism is kind of like I'm better than everyone else and everyone needs to admire me and everyone needs to know that I'm always right. So that's not what this is at all. It's often is that, and we've talked about humility in some of the previous weeks, like in the imposter syndrome week, we're talking about how a lot of us have been socialized to be humble, and humble can be a really positive value. But if I'm so humble that I'm always placing everyone above me, it can be a challenge for me to recognize I am deserving just like the people around me are deserving. And I feel like that's what self-compassion is I might see a lot of others up here and it's to say I'm up here too with with the others around me, that other people's needs are important and valuable. My needs are important and valuable. And how do I make sure that I'm caring for myself as I care for others? And I'm worthy of care just as I know others are worthy of care.
Yes, the common humanity piece. Yes, exactly.
Well, let's see. As we get close to wrapping up our time today, we've brainstormed a few activities and we'll come up with a few more that will be in the module. I think we'll have a link to some videos and resources for people to check out from this. Um, I know I always like to ask that question, like, what do we wish for our students? As you think about this topic in particular, what do you wish for our students in the context of self-compassion?
I I hope for students to explore their identities, explore what it means to be you. What is your goal for yourself? Where do you see your future self? How are you going to get there? What would it take investing in yourself to be that person? And acknowledging also, I think this is the mindfulness piece. Where are you right now? What do you need? How can you show yourself care right here, right now? And so I think what I hope for students is just to be able to engage in that self-reflection, that self-awareness. Um, it's nobody will be perfect in trying to build new skills immediately,
Right,
and that is okay. That is expected.
right.
We cannot just be perfect at something that we're trying for the first time. People think that therapy is easy, doing these things are easy. No, it's a skill. You have to build it. It takes time, it takes practice. And so my hope is that by doing these little activities like the self-compassion activity, is that you're investing in your future self, your long-term well-being, psychologically, emotionally, and physically and spiritually, just embracing your holistic well-being with these small investments.
I love that. That's beautiful. And I will add in my very simple language, I wish for you all to look at yourself the same way you look at a friend, to see all the good in
Mm.
yourself the same way that you're able to see that good in others around you that you love. Um, all right, everyone. Thank you for being in this community with us. Check out the module for some additional activities and discussion points. We will look forward to being in digital community with you all on the discussion posts later this week. We will also be in touch with you about what our remaining 2 weeks will look like in terms of activities and posts. So keep your eye out and your ear out for more communications from us. Jocelyn, thank you so much as always, and I hope you get some rest today. And everyone, have a wonderful week.